The first time I saw them together I laughed it off as office small talk, her clustered around a laptop, his shoulder brushing hers as they leaned in over a spreadsheet. He was tall, soft-voiced, the kind of man who made everyone in the room lower their voice unconsciously. They called each other work husband like it was a joke. She said it with a laugh that used to mean the same thing when she said my name. A laugh that didn't belong to anyone else. It took me 3 nights to stop replaying the image like a bad song on repeat. The 4th night I drove to the office under the pretense of closing out the quarter and found, tucked under a stack of files in the supply closet, a receipt for a hotel 2 towns over. The date matched a conference she'd attended. The handwriting on the back, a tiny looped scrawl she used when she was nervous, said, simply, "See you later." My hands shook so badly I dropped the receipt into my pocket like contraband. You don't plot revenge the moment your heart is broken. You plot it after the first silence, the first lie that peels the rest of your life from the wall like flaking paint. I could have screamed. I could have packed a bag and walked out with the slam of a lifetime. Instead I remembered something small and stubborn: evidence changes arguments into facts. I learned everything about office procedure I'd never bothered to learn before. I became patient in a way I'd never been with her. I read emails she'd carelessly left open when she thought I was asleep. I watched her calendar like a hawk. I took long walks around her building until I could map the back doors and the loading bays with the intimacy a cartographer brings to a coastline. I wrote things down in a little black notebook: dates, times, expressions, the cadence of their texts, and each entry tightened into a file, then into a case. What I didn't do was ruin them with gossip. That would have been petty and hollow. I wanted something that would scar the way betrayal had scarred me, permanent, public, and finally irrefutable. So I looked for the seams where their professional arrogance had given itself away: a bonus code reused in a personal invoice, an expense report padded with personal dinners, a keycard left in a car they borrowed for the day. The more I looked, the more the little irresponsibilities swelled into a pattern. When I approached HR at his company, I was careful. I left nothing to emotion. I handed over copies of expenses that didn't match the claimed travel itineraries. I forwarded emails that suggested client meetings that never occurred but had invoices attached. I framed everything in the language of policy violations, not heartache. The HR woman clicked through each attachment with polite, efficient eyes, and then she asked for more. She told me in a voice that had the gentleness of a scalpel that auditors would be involved. I felt something like vertigo and relief at the same time. Word moved faster than I expected. His company froze his accounts within a week. A professional ethics committee opened a quiet inquiry. She called me 3 times in one night, her voice pitched in panic. I kept her voicemails and saved them like trophies. When his firm published a terse internal memo about an ongoing investigation, the office rumor mill did its work. Names shifted, alliances reformed. The man who had been called work husband in drunken office emails suddenly had fewer allies at his side. I didn't ruin her job through fabricated charges. I simply compiled what she had already done herself: the private hotel receipts filed as client entertainment, the falsified vendor list that had routed payment to a personal account, the invoices that matched dates for conference attendance while surveillance footage from the venue, which I had, by then, managed to obtain through channels that respected legal boundaries, showed no sign of either of them. The evidence was a map drawn by their own hands. When the 2 investigations converged, when auditors from his side discovered a trail that led back to her project budgets, she sat in my kitchen and tried to explain. She wanted pity, but I had already turned the key in a lock I could not unturn. "Why?" she asked, a child's question that made me want to give a child's answer. "Because you let it get this far. Because you laughed and called him by a name that used to be mine and then hid receipts and kissed on business trips. Because some things you wear like a joke until one day they're a noose." The fallout was theatrical. He was escorted from the office with his briefcase in a cardboard box. I watched the video one night and felt no triumph, only a cold, steady satisfaction that the world was now required to read the story the way I had been forced to. She received a termination notice by courier at dawn, the letter concise and bureaucratic, the only language that could announce such finality without dramatics. Friends took sides. Our mutual acquaintances, who had pretended not to see the way she leaned over him at parties, said, in that dispassionate way people use when guilt arrives, that they were sorry things had to end like this. I collected those apologies and kept them in a drawer with the old receipts. People say revenge hollows you out. I had expected to be emptier after each file sent, after each conversation with auditors and counsel. Instead, I found the reverse, clarity. The fog of suspicion that had blurred everything cleared away, revealing not the life I had hoped for but a life that might be rebuilt from truer materials. She texted me a photo one night of her standing at a ruined doorway, mascara streaking down her face, with the caption, "You won." I didn't reply. I didn't want to learn the cadence of her defeat any more than I wanted to hear the new rumors about my name that began to float around, whispers that I had orchestrated a campaign of character assassination, that I had destroyed 2 careers. There is a cruelty in other people's assumptions that you cannot control. There is also a line between retribution and vindictiveness. I had chosen to cross that line where the law, the truth, and my wounded dignity aligned. I did not burn photos of them or post private videos online. I did not leak salacious details to the press. What I did was assemble the truth and hand it to institutions with the power to act. The result was the same, their livelihoods ended, the social scaffolding they'd built collapsed, but the method mattered to me. It meant I could look at myself in the mirror without recognizing a stranger. Months later, when the dust settled, when their names were footnotes in emails I would never open, I walked into our house and found it quieter, less alive, but honest in its emptiness. The ache of losing what we had never fully named still lingered, but so did a strange grace, a possibility that the life left could be recolored by my own decisions instead of someone else's laughter. Revenge had been a crucible. It had burned away the facade and left metal, raw, tempered, useful. I don't tell the story to boast. I tell it because sometimes betrayal is a theft and sometimes the only way to get anything back is to be relentless and lawful and not to allow the story to be rewritten by the mouths of the guilty. They lost what they had built together, I lost what I had thought would last. In the quiet of the evenings, when the house is just a house again, I open the little black notebook and look at the neat, clinical entries, dates, times, receipts, photographs. The paper cannot heal me, but it is proof that when love is replaced with deception, the truth, assembled, patient, uncompromising, can still force its way into the light.